Good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, conclusion of the Week 12 edition of the week that was. The first two parts of the review are up right now if you want to watch those. But today, we're going to look at the Sunday afternoon late games, including the Bills and Eagles, Chiefs and Raiders, Cardinals and the Rams, and the Broncos versus the Browns. Plus, we'll look at Sunday night football with the Ravens and Chargers, and Monday night football with the Bears and Vikings. Plus, stick around for my Week 13 power rankings and the updated playoff races in the NFL after 12 weeks. So with that, let's dive in to the Denver Broncos knocking out the Cleveland Browns 29-12. As the Broncos continue their winning ways. Individual numbers for the Denver Broncos, you've got Russell Wilson, 13 of 22, 134 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions, 91.9 QB rating. Williams was the leading rusher, 18 for 65 on 3.6 per run. Samaje Perine, 7 for 55 and a touchdown, averaging 7.9 per pop. Russell Wilson ran 11 times for 34 yards and a touchdown at 3.1 per run. Cortland Sutton led the Bronco receivers, 3 catches, 61 yards, 6 targets, and 20.3 yards per catch. Marvin Mims, 2 for 24 yards, 3 targets, 12 yards a catch. Humphrey, 1 catch for 13 on 1 target. Perine, 1 catch for 11 yards on 1 target. Jerry Jeudy, 2 for 11 on 3 targets, 5.5 yards a catch. Troutman, 1 for 8 yards on 1 target, and it went for a touchdown. And Williams, 3 for 6 yards on 6 targets, 2 yards a catch. Will Lutz, 2 for 2 on field goals, longest was 34, 3 for 3 on extra points. Dixon, 5 punts, 45.2 average, longest was 50, 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Locke was the leading tackler for the Broncos. He had 5 tackles plus a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Singleton, 4 tackles and a pass defense. Cooper, 4 tackles. Millen, Simmons, Moreau, and Harris, each with 3 tackles. Patrick Surtain, 2 tackles. And Josie Jewell with 2 tackles, 1 sack, and a forced fumble for the Broncos. For the Cleveland Browns, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 14 of 29, 134 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, quarterback rating of 73.1. P.J. Walker, 6 of 13, 56 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 58.5 QB rating. Ford was the leading rusher for the Browns, 9 for 65 on 7.2 per run. Kareem Hunt, 7 for 22 on 3.1. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 5 rushes for 21 yards on 4.2 per run. Your leading receivers for Cleveland are David Njoku, 6 catches, 59 yards on 9 targets, 9.8 yards per catch. Tillman, 4 for 55 on 5 targets, 13.8 per catch. Moore with 3 catches and 44 yards on 9 targets at 14.7 per catch. Amari Cooper, 2 catches, 16 yards on 6 targets, yards per catch. Ford, 4 for 14 on 7 targets and 3.5 yards per grab. And Bryant, 1 catch, 2 yards on 1 target, and that went for a TD. Hopkins, 2 for 2 on field goals, 36 was his long, and no extra points. Bojorquez, 3 punts, 60.3 average, long was 72, with a couple of touchbacks. Osu Koromoa, 7 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble, paced the Browns defense. Taki and Thornhill each had 6 tackles. Newsom 5 tackles and a pass defense. Delpit 3 tackles. Fields, Ford, and Okoronkwo each with 2 tackles. Myles Garrett 2 tackles and a pass defense for the Cleveland Browns. All right, total yards 294 for the Broncos, 269 for the Browns. Passing yards 162 to 125 in favor of Cleveland. Rushing yards is 169 to 107 in favor of Denver. Time of possession was 32-48 seconds for the Broncos, 27 minutes and 12 seconds for the Browns. First downs, 19 for Cleveland, 17 for Denver. Third downs, 2 of 13 for the Browns, 6 of 14 for the Broncos. And on fourth down, Cleveland went 2 for 5, Denver for 1. All right, Cleveland had 8 penalties for 66 yards. They were sacked 4 times for 28, with 3 lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Denver had 8 penalties for 71 yards. They were sacked once for 9 yards, 1 lost fumble, no interceptions, and 5 punts. Closing line was Denver -1. Over-under was 37.5. I took the Browns in both picks, and I lost them both. So now I'm 6-5 straight up and 5-6 ATS for the week. Moving on to the LA Rams, going into the desert and blowing out the Arizona Cardinals 37-14. We'll start with individual numbers for the Rams. Matthew Stafford, 25 of 33, 229, 4 touchdowns and 1 interception, and a 121.1 passer rating. Williams was the leading rusher for LA, 16 for 143 at 8.9 yards per run. 77 and 5.9 yards per run. Receivers are Tutu Atwell, 3 catches, 76 yards on 3 targets, 25.3 yards a catch. Williams, 6 for 61 and 2 scores on 6 targets, 10.2 yards per catch. Tyler Higbee, 5 catches, 29 yards, 2 TDs on 5 targets at 5.8 per catch. Puka Nacua, 4 for 27 on 8 targets, 6.8 yards per grab. Cooper Kupp, 3 catches, 18 yards on 5 targets, 6 yards a catch. Robinson, 2 for 13 yards on 2 targets, 6.5 yards per catch. Havrizik, 1 for 2 on field goals. He hit from 24. And 4 for 5 on extra points. Evans with a couple of punts, averaging 36.5 yards per. 41 was his long, with 1 touchback and 1 punt inside the 20. Huck was the leading tackler for the LA Rams, 4 tackles and a sack. Rose, Boom, and Kendrick also have 4 tackles apiece, as did Tomlinson. Turner with 3 tackles and 2 sacks. Taylor, 3 tackles. Hummel, 3 tackles. Reeder, 3 tackles. Johnson, 2 tackles, 2 passes defense. And Fuller had 2 tackles and 4 passes defense for the LA Rams. For Arizona, Kyler Murray was 27 of 45 for 256 yards, 1 touchdown interceptions, and an 83.2 QB rating. Leading rusher was James Conner, and he didn't run for a lot. 6 for 27 yards, 4.5 yards per run. Carter, 4 for 19 on 4.8 per run. DeMarcado, 3 for 15 yards, 5 yards per run. And that's pretty much it. Outside of Kyler Murray, who ran once for 2 yards and it went for a touchdown. All right. Marquise Hollywood Brown led the Cardinals receivers, 6 catches, 88 yards on 12 targets, 14.7 yards per catch. Trey McBride, 7 for 60 on 9 targets, 8.6 yards a catch. Rondale Moore, 2 catches, 35 yards on 3 targets, 17.5 yards per grab. Dortch, 3 catches, 27 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets. He averaged 9 yards a catch. Higgins, 1 catch for 26 on 2 targets. Carter, 4 catches, 15 yards on 4 targets at 3.8 per catch. And James Conner, 4 grabs, 5 yards on 5 targets, 1.3 yards per catch. On field goals and extra points attempted. 5 punts, 45 yards on average. 60 was his longest. Buda Baker and Clark were the leading tacklers for Arizona, each with 6 tackles. Thompson, 5 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Woods and Williams each with 4 tackles. Barnes, Gardeck, and Thomas each with 3 tackles. And Ojulari had 2 tackles for the Arizona Cardinals. Total yards, 457 for the Rams, 282 for the Cardinals. Passing yards, 229 LA, 219 Arizona. Rushing yards, 228 LA, and 73 Arizona. Time of possession, 34 minutes, 52 seconds for the Rams, and 25 minutes, 8 seconds for the Cardinals. First downs, 25-19 for LA. Third downs, LA 6 of 12, Arizona 6 of 17. Fourth downs, the Rams were 2 for 2, and the Cardinals were 2 for 3. All right. The Rams had 5 penalties for 23 yards. They were not sacked. They didn't lose a fumble. They threw an interception, and they only punted twice. Cardinals, 5 penalties, 34 yards. They were sacked 4 times, losing 37 yards. No fumbles lost, no interceptions, and 5 punts. Closing line is LA minus 2.5, and the over-under 45. I picked the Rams both straight up and against the spread, so that makes 7-5 straight up, 6-6 ATS. Next, the game of the week, and quite possibly the game of the year thus far here in 2023. The Philadelphia Eagles outlasting the Buffalo Bills in overtime, 37-34. We'll begin with the individual numbers for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, 18 of 31, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 90.2. Leading rusher was DeAndre Swift, 14 rushes, 80 yards, 5.7 yards per run. Jalen Hurts, 14 for 65 and 2 touchdowns on 4.6 yards per run. Kenneth Gainwell, 2 for 26 yards, 13 per run. And Boston Scott, 2 for 14, averaging 7 per run. Devonta Smith led the Philadelphia receivers. 7 catches, 106 and a touchdown on 8 targets, 15.1 yards per catch. A.J. Brown, 5 catches, 37 yards and a TD on 9 targets at 7.4 per catch. Olamide Zaccheaus, 1 catch, 29 yards on his lone target, and it went for a touchdown. Jake Stoll, in for the injured Dallas Goedert at tight end, 1 catch, 14 yards on 2 targets. On 3 targets, averaged 5 yards a catch. And DeAndre Swift, 1 catch for 4 yards on 1 target. Jake Elliott, 1 for 1 on field goals. His 59-yarder tied the game in forced overtime and was 4 for 4 on extra points. Braden Mann, 5 punts, averaging 53.8 per punt. Longest was 59 with 1 inside the 20. All right. Kevin Byard was the leading tackler for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had 9 tackles. Reed Blankenship had 8 tackles. Morrow had 7 tackles and a pass defense. Cunningham had 7 tackles. Jalen Carter, 3 tackles. Darius Big Play Slay, 3 tackles and 2 passes defense. Roby had 3 tackles. And James Bradbury, 3 tackles, 5 passes defense, and an for the Eagles. Over now to the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, 29 of 51, 339 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT, and an 82.1 passer rating. Truth be told, he played very well in this game. He was also Buffalo's leading rusher, 9 rushes, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 9 yards a run. James Cook, 16 for 43 yards on 2.7 yards per run. Latavius Murray, 9 for 30 yards, 3.3 per run. And Johnson, 6 for 19 at 3.2 per run. Gabe Davis was the leading receiver for the Bills. 6 catches, 105, and a touchdown on 12 targets, 17.5 yards a catch. Stephon Diggs, 6 for 74 yards and a touchdown on 11 targets, 12.3 yards per catch. James Cook, 6 for 57 on 7 targets, 9.5 yards per catch. Shakir, 3 catches, 47 yards on 5 targets at 15.7 per catch. Dalton Kincaid, 5 catches, 38 yards on 6 targets at 7.6 per grab. And Latavius, 3 catches, 18 yards on 5 targets at 6 yards a catch. Tyler Bass, 2 for 4 on field goals. Longest was 48. And 4 for 4 on extra points. Martin, 4 punts, 42.8 average. 54 was his longest. 3 of his 4 punts ended up inside the 20. All right. Micah Hyde led Buffalo's defense with 6 tackles. Jordan Poyer, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Johnson, 5 tackles. Douglas, 5 tackles. Ed Oliver, 3 tackles. Bernard, 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Dotson, 3 tackles and a pass defense. And Rousseau, 3 tackles for the Buffalo Bills. Okay. Total yards, 505 for the Bills versus 378 for the Eagles. Passing yards, 332 to 193 for Buffalo. Rushing yards for 185 to 173, Philadelphia. Time of possession, 40 minutes, 30 seconds for the Bills and 26 minutes, 53 seconds for the Eagles. First downs, 29 for Buffalo, 24 for Philly. The Bills were an impressive 13 of 22 on third down, while the Eagles were 4 of 11. As for fourth downs, 1 for 1 for the Bills, no fourth downs for the Eagles. Buffalo had 11 penalties for 10 of those in the first half. They were sacked once, losing 7 yards, with no fumbles lost, 1 interception, and 4 punts. And the Eagles had 4 penalties for 30 yards. They were sacked twice, also losing 7 yards, with 1 fumble lost, interception, and 5 punts. Closing line was Philadelphia minus 2.5. Over under was 48.5. I picked the Eagles both straight up and against the spread, so that makes me 8-5 and 7-6. ATS and straight up, not in that order, of course. Okay, the next game we're going to look at is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders jumped out to an early 14-0 lead, but then Patrick Mahomes weaved his magic yet again and downed the Raiders 31-17. Individual numbers for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, 27 of 34, 298, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 122.8 passer rating. Isaiah Pacheco, 15 carries, 55 yards, and 2 touchdowns, both from 1 yard out. He averaged 3.7 yards per run. Mahomes, 5 for 9 yards, 1.8 per run. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Rashid Rice led the Chiefs receivers, 8 catches, 107, and a touchdown on 10 targets, 13.4 yards a catch. Travis, 6 for 91 and 7 targets on 15.2 per catch. Isaiah Pacheco, 5 catches, 34 yards on 5 targets, 6.8 yards per grab. Sky Moore, 3 catches, 34 yards, 3 targets, and 11.3 yards per catch. And Noah Gray, 3 catches, 30 yards on 3 targets at 10 yards a grab. Watson, 1 catch, 3 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 1 catch, -1 yard on 1 target. Harrison Butker, 1 for 1 on field goals. His only field goal made was from 32, and 4 for 4 on extra points. Tommy Townsend, 4 punts, 52.8 average. Longest was 57, and a couple inside the 20-yard line. All right. L'Jarius Sneed led the KC defense with 7 tackles. Both Reed and Tranquil had 6 tackles. George Karlaftis, 3 tackles and a sack. Connor, 3 tackles. Cook with 2 tackles. Dana, 2 tackles. Dickerson, 2 tackles. McDuffie, 2 tackles and a pass defense. And Watson, same numbers, 2 tackles and a pass defense. For the Las Vegas Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, 23 of 33, 248 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 101.6 QB rating. Jacoby Myers attempted a pass, no completions, 39.6 QB rating. Josh Jacobs played arguably his best game this season for the Raiders. 20 rushes for 110 yards and a touchdown at 5.5 yards per run. Amir Abdullah, 1 rush, 11 yards. Jacoby Myers led all Vegas receivers. He had 6 catches for 79 yards and a TD on 7 targets, 13.2 yards a catch. Devontae Adams, 5 for 73 on 7 targets, 14.6 per catch. Hunter Renfrow, 4 for 38 on 4 targets, 9.5 yards a catch. Mayer, 2 catches, 27 yards on 4 targets, and 13.5 yards per grab. Josh Jacobs, 4 catches, 15 yards on 6 targets, 3.8 yards per catch. Austin Hooper, 1 grab, 14 yards on 2 targets. And Amir Abdullah, 1 catch for 2 yards on 1 target. Daniel Carlson, 1 for 2 on field goals, connecting from 34, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Cole with 3 punts, averaging 39 per punt. Longest was 51, and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. All right, Hobbs led the Raider defense with 7 tackles. He had Robert Spillane with 6 tackles. Jones, 5. Kuntz, 3 tackles. Morig and Diablo each have 3 tackles as well. Robertson also with 3 tackles. Masterson, 2 tackles for this Las Vegas Raider defense. All right, total yards, 360 for the Chiefs and 358 for the Raiders. Passing yards, 291 to 235 for Kansas City. Rushing yards is 123 to 69, Las Vegas. Time of possession, Chiefs 30 minutes, 45 seconds. Raiders 29 minutes, 15 seconds. First downs, 23 for the Chiefs, 16 for the Raiders. Third downs, 5 of 11 for Kansas City, 7 of 14 for Vegas. The Raiders also 0 for 2 on fourth down. All right, the Chiefs had 4 penalties for 40 yards. They were sacked once, losing 7. No fumbles or interceptions, and 4 punts. Meanwhile, the Raiders played a clean game. They had no penalties in this game. They were sacked once for 13 yards. No lost fumbles, no interceptions, and 3 punts. Closing line was Kansas City -9, and the over-under was 43. I picked KC both straight up. In fact, I picked KC straight up, but I took Vegas with the points. So I won the straight up pick, making me 9-5. And I lose the ATS pick, dropping me to 7-7. Okay, moving on to Sunday Night Football, the Baltimore Ravens beating the LA Chargers 20-10. Individual numbers for the Ravens first. Lamar Jackson, 18 of 32, 177, a touchdown, no interceptions, 82.4 passer rating. Mitchell was the leading rusher for Baltimore, 9 for 64 yards at 7.1 per run. Lamar Jackson, 11 rushes, 39 yards at 3.5 a pop. Zay Flowers had a big run for 37 yards, which went for a touchdown. Justice Hill, 526 on 3.3 per run. Isaiah Likely led Ravens receivers, 4 catches, 40 yards on 6 targets at 10 a catch. Odell Beckham Jr., 3 catches, 30 yards on 5 targets, 11.3 yards per catch. Mitchell, 2 for 25 yards on 2 targets, 12.5 yards a catch. Zay Flowers, 5 catches, 25 yards, and a TD on 8 targets, and 5 yards a catch. Rashad Bateman, 2 for 21 yards on 5 targets, 10.5 yards a catch. Nelson Aguilar, 1 catch, 21 yards on 2 targets. And Gus Edwards, 1 catch, 11 yards on 1 target. Justice Hill was targeted in this game but did not record a reception. Justin Tucker, 2 for 3 on field goals, longest was 48, 2 for 2 on extra points. 20-yard line. All right, Stevens led the Raven defense with 6 tackles and a pass defense. Smith and Queen each had 5 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass defense. Stone with 4 tackles, Kyle Hamilton with 4 tackles and a pass defense. Kyle Van Noy, 3 tackles and a pass defense. Williams, 2 tackles and a pass defense. Pierce, 2 tackles. Jadeveon Clowney, 2 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble for the Baltimore Ravens. Over to the Chargers, Justin Herbert, 29 of 44, 217, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 75.7 QB rating. He was also the Chargers' leading rusher, 4 for 47 yards at 11.8 per run. Austin Eckler was held in check for the most part. 10 rushes, 32 yards, 3.2 a catch, or a run rather. And Kelly with 3 rushes for 8 yards at 2.7 per run. Keenan Allen led the Chargers receivers with 14 catches, 106 yards on 16 targets, 7.6 yards per catch. Gerald Everett, 4 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets at 10.8 per catch. Austin Eckler, 5 for 32 yards on 6 targets, 6.4 yards per catch. Erickson, 1 catch, 17 yards on 3 targets. Johnston, 1 catch, 7 yards on 3 targets. Kelly, 2 catches, 6 yards on 2 targets at 3 per grab. Guyton, 1 catch, 4 yards on 5 targets. Davis, 1 catch for 2 yards on 1 target. And Smart was targeted once but didn't record a catch. Cameron. Okay, really? Get back there. Okay, Cameron Dicker, 1-for-1 field goals, connecting from 39, 1-for-1 on extra points. Scott, 3 punts, 52 half defense. James, 4 tackles. Tuipulotu, 3 tackles. Samuel, 3 tackles and a pass defense. Johnson, 2 tackles, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. And not mentioned is Max Crosby. He didn't record anything on Sunday night. Oh, no, Max Crosby plays for the Raiders. What am I thinking? Okay, moving on. Total yards, 361 for the Ravens, 279 for the Chargers. Passing yards, 193 for LT4 for Baltimore. 33 minutes, 23 seconds for the Ravens. 26 minutes, 37 seconds for the LA Chargers. First downs, 20-16 Baltimore. Third downs, Ravens 4 of 13, Chargers 7 of 15. Fourth downs, both teams were 1 for 3. All right. They had the same amount of penalties and nearly the same amount of yards. 5 for 42 yards for the Ravens with 2 sacks, lose 13 yards. No lost fumbles or interceptions. The Chargers, 1 interception, and each team with 3 punts. Closing line was Baltimore -3, and the over-under was 48.5. I took the Ravens both straight up and against the spread. That makes me 10-5 straight up and 8-7 ATS. And that is now 9 straight victories on Sunday Night Football. I am 11-1 on Sunday nights overall this year. Final game we'll look at is Monday Night Football, and this was a snooze fest. The Chicago Bears beat the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis 12-10. Individual numbers for the Bears first. Justin Fields, 27-37, 217 yards, no touchdowns, 0.5 per run. And Khalil Herbert, 6 for 24 on 4 yards per run. D. Moore, Chicago's leading receiver, 11 catches, 114 on 13 targets at 10.4 yards per catch. Cole Kmet, 7 catches, 43 yards on 7 targets at 6.1 per catch. Johnson, 5 for 40 yards on 5 targets, 8 yards a catch. Khalil Herbert, 2 for 14 on 2 targets and 7 yards a catch. And Darnell Mooney, 2 catches, 6 yards on 3 targets, and 3 yards a catch. Cairo Santos, 4 for 5 on field goals. Longest was 55. No extra points. Gill with 3 punts, averaging 45.7 yards. 56 was his longest. He had 1 touchback and 1 punt. Jermaine Edwards, 6 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Oh, no, that's Trent Edwards with 6 tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception. Tremaine Edmonds had 5 and a forced fumble. Gordon, 4 tackles, 1 pass defense, and an interception. Brisker, 2 tackles, half a sack, 1 pass defense, and 1 interception. Montez Sweat, 2 tackles, 1.5 sacks. And Johnson, 2 tackles, 3 passes defense, and an interception for the Bears defense. For the Minnesota Vikings, bad night for the Pastronaut, Josh Dobbs. 22 of 32, 185 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. Ouch. Quarterback rating of 54.3. Madison was the leading rusher for the Vikings, 10 for 52 yards, 5.2 per run. Josh Dobbs ran twice for 11 yards, 5.5 a run. Chandler 4 for 8 on 2 yards. And Powell had 1. TJ Hawkinson led Minnesota receivers, 5 is 50 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets at 10 yards a catch. Powell 3 for 45 on 3 targets at 15 per catch. Addison 6 for 39 on 10 targets, 6.5 yards per catch. Osborne 3 for 34, 4 targets, 11.3 yards a catch. It's 5.5 yards a catch. CJ Helm 2 for 3 yards on 3, 1.5 yards a catch. And Chandler 1 catch for 3 yards on 2 targets. Greg Joseph 1 for 1 on field goals. He hits from 34 and 1 for 1 on extra point. And Wright had 3 punts, 38.7 average, 37 was his long, with 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Okay, Pace led the Vikings defense with 7 tackles and 1 sack. Danielle Hunter, 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Bynum, 6 tackles. Blackman, 6 tackles. Metellus, 5 tackles and half a sack plus 2 forced fumbles. Byron Murphy, 4 tackles and a pass defense. And DJ Wanham, 3 tackles and 2 passes defense for the Vikings. Okay, total yards 317 for the Bears, 242 for the Vikings. Rushing yards 118.73, also to Chicago. Time of possession 35 minutes 50 seconds for the Bears and 24 minutes 10 seconds for the Vikings. 8 of 18 on third down. The Vikings were 2 for 9. Fourth downs, 1 for 1 for the Bears, 0 for 2 for the Vikings. Chicago finishes with 7 penalties and 76 yards. They were sacked 3 times, losing 18. 2 fumbles lost, sacked twice for 16. No lost fumbles, 4 interceptions thrown, and 3 punts. Closing line is Minnesota -3, over-unders 43.5. I took the Vikings both straight up and against the spread. So in week 12, I finished at 10-6 in my straight up picks and 8-8 ATS. Okay, now we're going to move on to the week 13 power rankings. We'll start at the bottom with the Carolina Panthers at 1-10 at number 32. Number 31 is New York Giants at 4-8. They're in the same spot. 29 is the Tennessee Titans at 4-7. They're down 7 spots from last week. Number 20 Commanders at 4-8. They're down a spot from last week. Number 27 is the Arizona Cardinals at 2-10. They're up a few spots. And that was necessitated because there are a number of teams that fell below them. Number 20 Bears at 4-8. They're up a couple spots. 25 is the New York Jets at 4-7, down 4 spots. 24 is the Las Vegas Raiders at 5-7, up 2 spots, despite losing. Number 23 in the same spot as last week is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 7. Number 22 down last week are the Cincinnati Bengals at 5-6. Number 21 is the Green Bay Packers at 5-6. They are up 4 spots from last week. Number 20 is the Minnesota Vikings at 6-6, down 3 spots from last week. 19 is the LA Chargers at 4-7, up 1 spot. 18 is the LA Rams at 5-6, up 6 spots. 17 is the New Orleans Saints, 5-6, down 1 spot. 16 at 5-6, also up 3 spots. 14 is the Buffalo Bills at 6-6, down 1 spot. 13 is the Denver Broncos at 6-5, up 2 spots. Number 12 is the Seattle Seahawks at 6-5, down 1 spot. Number 11 is the Houston Texans at 6-5 and also on 1 spot. Number 10, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 7-4. I didn't write their record in, but I'll get it right now. They're up 2 spots from last week. Number 9 is the Cleveland Browns, also 7-4. They are down 1 spot. They trade spots with the Miami Dolphins, who's number 8 with an 8-3 record. They're up 1 spot. Number 7 is the Detroit Lions at 8-3, down 2 spots. Number 6 is the Jacksonville Jaguars at 8-3. They are up 1 spot. Number 5 is the Dallas Cowboys at 8-3, also up 1 spot. Number 4 is the San Francisco 49ers, 8-3. Same spot as last week. In fact, my top 4 is unchanged. It's the Kansas City Chiefs at 8-3, stay at number 3. The Baltimore Ravens at 9-3 is number 2. And the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-1 retains the top spot. Okay, we've got one final piece of business to look at. Before we get out of here, and that is the updated playoff races in the National Football League. Give me just a second to get those up. You won't be... Okay. Go to NF. Okay, good. Now, standings. Okay, there are the standings, and we want the playoff standings. Okay, here we go with the playoff standings in the NFL after week 12. We'll start with the AFC. The Baltimore Ravens are leaders of the AFC North at 9-3. 3-2 versus the North, 6-3 in the conference, 504 strength of schedule, and 470 strength of victory. The number 2 seed is the current AFC West leaders, the Kansas City Chiefs at 8-3, 3-1 versus the West, 6-1 in the conference, 556 strength of schedule, 495 strength of victory. Kansas City wins the tiebreaker over Miami and Jacksonville based on a head-to-head sweep. The AFC South leaders, the Jacksonville Jaguars, are the number 3 seed in the AFC at the present time at 8-3. 4-1 versus the South, 6-2 in the conference. 549 strength of schedule, 506 strength of victory. Jacksonville wins the tiebreaker over Miami based on strength of victory, which is nearly 200 points higher than that of the current AFC East leaders, the Miami Dolphins, sitting in the number 4 spot at 8-3. 3-1 versus the East, 6-2 in the conference, 419 strength of schedule, and a very weak strength of victory of 311. As for the wild cards, the number 5 seed presently is the Pittsburgh Steelers at 7-4. 3-1 versus the North, 5-3 in the conference, 561 strength of schedule, 506 strength of victory. The Steelers win the tiebreaker over Cleveland based on best win percentage in division games. That bumps the Cleveland Browns down to number 6. They also have a 7-4 record, 3-2 versus the North, 5-3 in the conference, 556 strength of schedule, 519 strength of victory. And currently sitting in the final wild card spot, the number 7 spot, that's the Indianapolis Colts at 6-5. 2-2 versus the South, 4-3 in the conference, 484 strength of schedule, 388 strength of victory. Indy wins the tiebreaker over Denver based on best win percentage in conference games. The division tiebreak was initially used to eliminate Houston. Indy owns the tiebreaker over Houston based on head-to-head win percentage. All right, that drops the Texans down to number 8 at 6-5, so they would be on the outside right now. 1-2 versus the South, 3-3 in the conference, 488 strength of schedule, 463 strength of victory. Houston owns the tiebreaker over Denver based on best win percentage in conference games, and it just so happens that those two teams will be playing. All right, number 9 is the Denver Broncos, also at 6-5. 1-2 versus the West, 3-4 in the conference, 516 strength of schedule, 522 strength victory. Down in 10th are the Buffalo Bills at 6-6. 2-2 versus the East, 3-5 in the conference, 474 strength of schedule, 420 strength of victory. Number 11 is the Cincinnati Bengals at 5-6. 0-4 versus the North, 1-6 in the conference. Not good either way. 552 strength of schedule, 474 strength of victory. Number 12 is the Las Vegas Raiders, 5-7. Versus the West, 3-5 in the conference, 489 strength of schedule, 375 strength of victory. Then you have a 3-way tie for 13th with the Chargers, Titans, and Jets. The LA Chargers are at 4-7, 1-1 versus the West, 2-4 in the conference. Strength of schedule is 552, strength of victory is 404. LA wins the tiebreakers over both Tennessee and the Jets based on best win percentage in conference games. This drops Tennessee to number 14. They are also 4-7. 0-2 versus the South, 2-5 in the conference, 500 strength of schedule, 341 strength of victory. Tennessee wins the tiebreaker over New York based on best win percentage in conference games, putting the Jets down at number 15, also at 4-7. 1-3 versus the East, 2-6 in the conference, 536 strength of schedule, 565 strength of victory. And at the bottom of the AFC at number 16 are the New England Patriots at 2-9. 2-2 versus the East, 2-4 in the conference, 544 strength of schedule, and 435 strength of victory. That's the AFC. Now let's jump over to the NFC. Number 1 is the Philadelphia Eagles, in control presently of the NFC East. 10-1 record, best in the NFL. 3-0 versus the East, 6-0 in the conference. 472 strength of schedule, 482 strength of victory. Number 2 is the current NFC West leaders, the San Francisco 49ers at 8-3. 3-0 versus the West, 6-1 in the conference. 500 strength of schedule, 489 strength of victory. San Francisco wins the tiebreaker over Detroit based on best win percent. The Lions, leaders of the NFC North, down to number 3 at 8-3. 2-1 versus the North, 5-2 in the conference, 452 strength of schedule, 400 strength of victory. Number 4 is the Atlanta Falcons, leaders of the very weak AFC or NFC South at 5-6. 3-0 versus the South, 4-4 in the conference, 427 strength of schedule, 382 strength of victory. Atlanta owns the tiebreak New Orleans based on head-to-head win percentage. All right. The Cowboys, Seahawks, and Vikings are the 3 wild cards at the present time. Dallas is in the number 5 spot at 8-3. 3-1 versus the East, 5-3 in the conference, 384 strength of schedule, 308 strength of victory. Seattle is number 6 at 6-5, 1-3 in the West, and 5-3 in the conference. 464 strength of schedule, 377 strength of victory. And in the 7th and final playoff spot in the NFC is the Minnesota Vikings at 6-6. 2-1 versus the North, 6-3 in the conference, 478 strength of schedule, 418 strength of victory. On the outside of the playoffs looking in, you got the Packers, Rams, and Saints all at 5-6. Green Bay is sitting in that number 8 spot at 5-6. 2 within the North, 4-3 in the conference, 508 strength of schedule, 464 strength of victory. Green Bay owns the both LA and New Orleans based on a head-to-head sweep. The Rams are in the 9 spot at the present time at 5-6. 4-1 versus the West, 4-4 versus the conference. 528 strength of schedule, 386 strength of victory. LA owns the tiebreaker over New Orleans based on best win percentage in conference games. This drops the Saints down to 10. They're 5-6 as well. 1-2 versus the South, 2-4 versus the conference. 415 strength of schedule, 304 strength of victory. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are next at number 11 with a 4-7 record. 1-1 versus the South, 3-4 in the conference, 548 strength schedule, 413 strength of victory. Then you have a 3-way tie place with the Giants, Bears, and Commanders. New York is 4-8, 2-2 versus the East, 3-4 in the conference, 474 strength of schedule, 255 strength of victory. New York owns the tiebreaker over Chicago based on best win percentage conference games. The division tiebreaker was initially used to eliminate Washington. New York owns the tiebreaker over Washington based on percentage. They swept the Commanders this year. Chicago is number 13 at 4-8. 1-3 versus the North, 3-5 in the conference, 456 strength of schedule, 340 strength of victory. Chicago wins the tiebreaker over Washington based on head-to-head win percentage. Dropping the Commanders down to 14. Washington is 4-8, 0-5 versus the East, 2-7 in the conference, 489 strength of schedule, 333 strength of victory. 5th is the Arizona Cardinals at 2-10, 0-4 versus the West, 2-6 in the conference, 533 strength of schedule, 591 strength of victory. And sitting in 16th and last place, the Carolina Panthers at 1-10, worst record in the league. 0-2 versus the South, 0-7 in the conference, 537 strength of schedule, 545 strength of victory. That's going to do it. Week 12 edition of the week that was. Again, if you want to catch the first 2 parts of the review, the Turkey Day triple header and the Black Friday game in part 1, and the Sunday afternoon early games in part 2, You can watch them both, then come back to this one. And next, we'll be taking a look at the television schedule for Conference Championship Saturday in college football. That's coming up shortly, so stick around. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin.